Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure for this episode to be joined by Jessica Mcilveen, all the way from Australia, just a little bit, not that far from New Zealand, but still far away. The first thing, Jessica, so much for taking the time to be here with us. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. I think that there's going to be a lot of really interesting things for everyone listening to learn and to actually explore a little bit more. So after saying that, I'm going to ask you first for you to introduce yourself to everyone. Who is Jessica?
She's many things, but I guess to sum it up in what I do business-wise, so I'm a family relationship specialist. So I generally work with parents who feel like they've tried everything to understand and connect with their children, and they're just not seeing the results that they want. So when they work with me, we usually work towards that, understanding them from a biological and a psychological perspective, which then allows them to build that relationship that they want with their children. So that's essentially what I do.
Beautiful. Such an important work. And I know a little bit, we've talked about this, but what led you to actually do this work in your life? What was the journey to this point?
So much. I feel like there's been many, many different lifetimes. So I guess because I've had I've had different careers now, but I can say that the one stable desire of mine has always been to work with children and families, always, ever since I was 15 years old. And that drive really came from, which I only realized as I was an adult, right? I didn't realize where the driver was coming from, but it was very clear to me. It was coming from my urge to provide the safety to children that I was seeking when I was young, really. So I had, my childhood was pretty good up until about 6 or 7. I don't really remember much of it. And that really tells me that it was really pretty cruisy. Nothing much going on. It was good. Mum and Dad rarely fought. We had acreage. We played every day. We were always outside exploring. We were the little explorers. We loved life. It was great. And there came a point where, there was some demons, I guess, of my dad's that he couldn't ignore anymore. He was very disconnected from his emotions and really struggled with his emotions and what he was feeling and his racing thoughts, right? His mind was very, very fast going, and he just wanted to disconnect from them. So he first started with gambling, and then it later turned to alcoholism. And that just led to the breakdown of our family completely, but it led to him being depressed and then suicidal. And my mum was depressed for much of my childhood then after that age. And my role was to keep my dad alive, keep my mum, or try and make my mum happy. That was really what I took on it. And then it was to protect and care for my brother and sister. Also just to keep everybody okay. And for me then, it led to a lot of instability and a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of situations where I was afraid all of the time. I didn't know what Dad was doing. I didn't know what actions or behaviors he was going to come home with. And so it was very unstable for me. And I suppose that's where my driver came from. It was really wanting to prevent that for other children. I guess that's where it comes from.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that for so many of us, like we do have this this setback a lot of times, and seeing what struggles we have in our own lives. And it's such an important topic because I do know in so many situations that the kids and the children in the family, even if they have a family, both parents or one parent, a lot of times they end up being the parents, or like they end up parenting the parents in a sense. And that's not the ideal world. Like, it's not ideal that someone like you needs to take care of your siblings and in a sense keep an eye on your parents. And it's something that I find so amazing, that you're able to actually help others to not get into this situation. And I find really interesting, because I worked with kids in the past. Now mostly I work with adults. What was in your journey, and what has been the difference between working directly with the kids and working with the parents?
They're so different. They're so different. So I found the real gift when working with children was that I could be this complete safe zone, where children could say anything and not be judged, criticized, pulled up on. They could do anything and they would not be judged, criticized by me whatsoever. I was coming to them with curiosity, right? I was an outsider. I just wanted to be curious, and I wanted to give them that sense of freedom and self-expression that they were probably not getting within the home. So I got to be that safe person. And while doing that, and when I was doing that, it was through, yes, I was a social worker, but also I did yoga therapy with children with complex needs and behaviors. And during that time, it then led to children's, I guess, sense of self and confidence did start to increase, right? It really did. And that's because I was able to provide that safe zone, and also just be in family homes and guide parents within their home, within their walls of safety as well, right? Most parents are pretty open. Most parents just want the best for their children, right? If not all, they really do. So I think working one-on-one, it was really that aspect of me being able to give them that safe zone, which I felt, I loved doing it. I really did. But I guess where it came to an end for me was, well, it depends on the impact I want to make. So I can continue doing one-on-one stuff with individual children, or I can work with groups of parents, because the parent-child relationship is the key. It's the key to everything. It's the key to every child's future, their future mindsets, their mental health, their goals, what they want, everything, their future relationships, their future families. So I've always, I love psychology. I love neuroscience. I love the brain. I love human behavior. I love epigenetics. I love all of those things. And I get to share that with parents now. And it's really a concept and a framework that is new-ish in the world. We seem to veer towards the medical way a lot. However, I find that can be very limiting. And this framework that I use now is very expansive and very accepting. And it's just based on understanding. It's not based on judging and trying to fix or change. So I guess working with the parents now, there's more of, more parents then get to feel free and content within themselves, and we get to work with their mindsets, and therefore children get to experience the happy homes, right? It's a flow-on effect. So the impact now gets to be bigger because I can work with larger groups of parents.
Yes, and that is such an important work, and I see it a lot of times when sometimes working with kids. I used to tell some of the teachers when I was working, with schools and things like that. I used to tell the teachers, if the parents are not actually here, if the parents are not involved in creating these changes and these new habits or anything that the kids I was sharing with them, then they're going to go home, and that is not going to be able to continue. And yes, it helps, but as you say, that relationship is so key, and it's so key in so many aspects. of our lives, even with most of us adults. Like, as you were saying, whether we had really traumatic experiences or not that traumatic, mostly fine, still that relationship carries on for the rest of our lives. And I know a lot of times one of my main practices that I have been doing for the last 17 years that has been with Tibetan Buddhism. There's a lot of practices there that are about being grateful to our parents and not so much about exactly their actions, but just about the fact that they gave us life. They provided for us in their own way how they could, how they were prepared to do that. And with the understanding that they are people going through stuff.
Exactly.
And as you had said before, they are doing the best with what they were given.
Yes. And I think on that note, one of the powerful things of working with parents then is allowing them to see that perfection in parenthood is not possible. Therefore, can you be open to your child telling you what they don't need from you and what they need more of? Like, are you open to having a conversation that you might feel criticized with them? Or are you open to seeing that you might not be doing the best thing for your individual child in front of you? So, because it's not, the second that we start to take things personally, which is really, really difficult when you don't have somebody by your side, especially in parenthood. It's one of the biggest roles that anybody could ever have. I find that is what's beneficial, because then we get to open up the conversations and imagine being able to discuss freely with your parents what you like about them and what you don't like about them in terms of how they relate to you and talk to you and connect with you, because not many of those conversations happen. They don't. So that's a really it's a really cool exercise that I get a lot of my clients to do with their kids.
That's so beautiful. And I think that, as you just mentioned, that perfectionism, that as well is key, because a lot of times I talk with people about conscious parenting, and you know, there's also an idea of what does that mean. And it's like, I'm just trying all of the time to say it's about you being you, like you do you. There's no like way of doing it. It's just, as you were saying, like no judgment, being open and being able to allow yourself to listen and to include their one's needs, your kids' needs, your partners, if you have a partner's needs, to be able to use that all of the time. And saying that, I would love to explore a little bit more, because you mentioned one of the elements that you work with, which is epigenetics. I love working with epigenetics, but for the people that don't know what that is, can you elaborate a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'll speak more to how we understand it behaviorally, because this is generally why people come to me, and this is definitely how I use it. I'm not using it to diagnose people or anything like that. So how I use it is to understand behaviors and needs of people, children and adults. So when we think of epigenetics, so genes are about 5 to 10% of who we are, and epigenetics is the remaining, right? So that's 90 to 95% of us. So huge, massive. And it seems ridiculous that it's only in the last 5 to 10 years that we've been starting to talk about epigenetics. So usually the best way to understand how it all interacts behaviorally is that so we have dominant hormones in our body, and depending on which one is our dominant hormone, which was decided in utero. Okay, so it's been decided long back. All right. And which, depending on which dominant hormone is in your body, dictates so many things. So it dictates which organs are the strongest in your body. So for example, it could be your digestive system is the strongest, or it could be your brain and your nervous system is the strongest, because there are different levels, or it could be your muscular system, right? So there are 3 different levels. So it will depend on which organs are strongest, which then dictates many things, right? It dictates behaviors, it dictates needs. When I say needs, what do I mean by that? It means, how do I how do I need to interact with the world to feel good in my body? Okay. So for some people, it is going 10-10 every day, having goals, going after them, ticking off lists, going, not really socializing too much. It's not a high need. Whereas there are others where socializing and being connected with people, high need. Otherwise they don't feel good in their bodies because their dominant hormone is not being released. So there's lots of different aspects that it impacts. And I guess, when we're talking about it with children, the benefit is that we then get to understand their learning behaviors. What do they need to learn the best, focus the best? What do they need in their social interactions? So some children get described as being super shy or too outgoing. Well, maybe that's not what's happening here. Maybe we don't need to use negative connotations around those words. Maybe this is how their body is interacting with their biology, and this is now what's happening with their behaviors. So the majority of children in schools that have, ADHD are usually this one particular epigenetic health type, and they're called activators, right? They're pumping full of adrenaline, and they have so much energy to burn that they need to be moving, okay? And they can't focus unless they're given that freedom to move. We can also understand things like a communication style. So some people are more feelings-based and some people are more logic-based, right? So when you have an organ in your body, like your brain that is the strongest, are you really going to be tapping into emotions all of the time or feelings all of the time, talking from feeling? You mainly want to be thinking about things logically. So thinking your way through things logically. Solutions are usually logic-based. So it's very different then, right? So then understanding that in partnerships or, parent-child can be opposite and completely different. We can understand things like what foods does our body need and what times of the day do we need to eat so that those hormones are at their optimal level. Because what do I mean by optimal level or imbalance? Well, it's when your nervous system is in balance. Okay, and our nervous systems are not, for the most part, they're just not. We've really created an environment or a world here that kicks our nervous systems to the ground constantly. So we want to keep getting it back into balance, So then our behaviors can feel more responsive rather than reactive, or we can have more time to have fun and joy in our world instead of that stress and that worry. So there's loads of things that it helps with. All from measuring our skeletal system and understanding how our hormones are interacting in our body and which ones are dominant, simplistically put.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because some of these topics I find, especially I remember I did my postgrad in neuroscience now 12 years ago. And
awesome.
that was at the very beginning of when neuroscience was starting to become a thing that people knew about. And what I found was that it seemed quite a high level of understanding. And I'm like, well, there's also, like, as you just said, like what you just explained, that everyone can understand that. Of course, not everyone can measure and know how to work with it, but these things sometimes can be easy to understand and easy to incorporate in our lives. And I think that, as you just mentioned, there are so many of these things that would make all of our lives so much easier if we know about them. Because if I know that I behave in these ways, or I have an inclination to behave in this way, my friend has an inclination to behave in this way, my parents have an inclination to behave in this way, then I can meet them where they are. They can meet me where I am. And all of our interactions could change a lot. As you were saying before, this is one of the things with kids at school nowadays, that the system for a lot of the kids, it's not the correct system for them in the way that the schools are run. And all of the kids, especially those with that have been diagnosed with ADHD and all of those letters and are neurodiverse, they need a different way of behaving and acting. And if we can just meet them where they are instead of trying to force everyone into boxes, how different the world would be, and how different, as the topic that I think that you are so passionate about, the parent and kid relationship would be, and how much of an impact that would have on everyone's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, it's tricky then, because we think, well, what's the solution then? And I think, it can be quite overwhelming to try and want to fix all of the systems that we have, right? When you're a parent, you've got your child entering lots of different systems. They've got the schooling system, they've got home is still a system, family is still a system, okay? They're still run by certain expectations and rules, and they're still coming from a certain place. So we've got those two systems, and then there's the extended family system, then there's the medical system, which a lot are involved in, and then there's extracurricular activities, so then there's those systems. There's just so many different worlds that we have to be involved with. And I guess when that becomes all too much and all too overwhelming, the biggest tip, or the number one thing that I share with parents is that, you get to begin at home. You get to begin the understanding of that child and just the acceptance for everything they are and everything that they're not at home. That's all that really matters. So we can get really overwhelmed by outside our houses. And, I have parents that have got 5 different professionals in their child's life. That means 5 different opinions. That means 5 different homework tasks and different expectations, and 5 different views on who your child should be as well. So when that all gets too much, that's why coming back to focusing on the parent-child relationship and understanding the child rather than focusing on their behaviors is going to create more results than all of those professionals combined.
Yes, definitely. And how different, in your experience, is it for those single parents, or for those that are not perhaps come from a blended family, so it's not the biological parent, but there's some kind of difference in terms of having the traditional both biological parents? Is there a big difference in your experience of those relationships?
I can't say I have any evidence either way for that, or that I've noticed any big themes or trends. So anything I say right now would be I would be making educated assumptions. So they're not the trends that I've seen too much more of. I work with both coupled parents versus single parents versus divorce versus children that have parents that have passed away, all types. And I guess the one theme above it all is just exactly what the parents are struggling with. It's generally always the same thing. It's just not understanding their behaviors, and not just not feeling like they're supporting their child in the way that they need. So that remains the same. But in terms of, do we get more behaviors in this family because of this reason? That's not something that I have evidence of.
Good. Yeah. And I'm curious about, we have a lot of different cultures, and as you were saying, like, we have all of these different expectations. Have you noticed anything particular? Perhaps, like, you're based in Australia. Have you noticed some key difference between your clients in Australia and those from other countries or other cultures?
Yeah, look, I think one thing that we have, Australia seems to be wanting different paths, so alternative ways of doing everything. Really, doesn't matter what it is. So the alternative methods, frameworks, therapies, approaches, everything. I believe that traction is picking up here, without a doubt. And the majority of my clients are from Australia. I've had some clients from Canada, and I think it seems, and then the ones that I've had, I've been exposed to from the US, have very much still been in the strict medical train of thought where we've got one book to sort everything out, and every behavior is wrong unless it's a behavior that I've approved of. That's definitely a theme that comes through. So, and that's definitely here in Australia too, that's definitely present. But so speaking from any other countries, I'm not sure. We're very multicultural here in Australia, absolutely. And I have in my programs, I have even within Australia clients from every a lot of different cultures actually. To some Greek, I've worked with some Indian families. I've worked with the Kiwis as well, but they're outside of Australia, and Canadians, of course, and South Africans. So I think in terms of what's dominant in each country, I haven't been exposed to as many as I could to make that assumption. Mine are mainly Australian, but I do believe the trend is here to go towards something that hasn't been tried before, because the cookie cutter model is not giving us what we want, and nor will it ever. It will never. It's an outdated system based on old philosophies of control, really control and expectation. It makes no consideration for individuality and just being human. Jesus, just being human. So that's all I've noticed.
And for those parents, that are listening, what are some of the things that you would share with them? Just because I know so many that I work with that they feel, their own life, just with work and their own pressures. There's already so much. What would you say to them in terms of the importance of taking the time and developing some of this awareness to meet their kids where they are?
So I think a few things. I'll just rattle off a few things. The first thing that comes to me is, one, stop focusing on behaviors and start focusing on the relationship. You become more connected to your child and spend some one-on-one, present, loving, open time with your child, and you will be surprised as to what happens. Okay. Your child doesn't need more discipline. They don't need more boundaries or to be yelled at more. And I haven't met too many parents that feel really great about themselves after they've yelled at their kids. So focus on the relationship. Connection trumps everything every time. Second thing is that, please don't discount the need for you to have your own time and self-care. Parents seem to discount that a lot, and it seems so trivial and so silly. But the second that I start working with clients and they start taking time for themselves and doing what they intuitively know they need to do for their bodies and their minds, everything shifts. Okay, you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. Try something different. Do something you love to do. Your children are not more important than you, and vice versa. Your life still needs to be valued and you still need to feel fulfilled. Otherwise, you are just not going to show up in the way that you want to be for your child or for any human for that matter. So take time for you, and just know that the guilt that you feel, even thinking about it or doing it, is never going away. So accept it, get over it, and do it anyway, because the benefits far exceed what your guilt is giving you right now. And also just know that any behaviors that your child are exhibiting are a key. Okay, they're a key, they're a hint, they're a clue to something. They're not trying to be manipulative, aggressive, violent, rude, disrespectful, all of these words that people use to describe children. They're just trying to communicate their needs. They've got a need that's not being met. So get curious. So put on the lens of curiosity, and get curious about it. Start asking questions, or even yourself, start getting curious. It's a clue to something. And that's often what gets missed. All of our behaviors are clues. We're no exemptions. The same for adults. We behave the way we do to meet a certain need. Okay. Yeah, we might be able to verbalize it as an adult, maybe if we're lucky, if we've done some work on ourselves, but children cannot. So that's why I find understanding children's epigenetics is super powerful, because we get to understand their first dominant need biologically. And if you give that child that first need, their behaviors alter. So I know recently for one of my clients, the child required just more connection time, right? Which most children do, but these little connectors, they run on oxytocin, so they need more. And so they connect at dinner time rather than it just being task mode, eat. No, they sit there and they have a chat and they talk and they eat together. And then there's more book time, but there's more time. 2 days, done. Child wants to get ready for school by himself now. He doesn't need mum. He's listening to mum. He's smiling a lot more. There's no more emotional meltdowns, not as much. We can never stop them. So if we know that one need, we're going to be able to support them better. But get curious. And also understanding where your stresses are coming from with your children too. So what is the guiding subconscious belief behind that? Usually it's a certain expectation that you have. Expectations always lead to frustrations. So what is the expectation that's not being met? Okay, is it because they're not the perfect child, or they talk too much, they talk too little, they can't pronounce their words properly, they don't eat when you want them to, and then children should do this because it means this, and then it means this, and then it means this. So start digging and asking yourself questions, because frustrations and anger and stress is only coming from expectations not being met. And our expectations are just unconscious beliefs that have been programmed from our parents generally. So get curious about yourself too. And know there's no perfection. Okay. Stop aiming for it. Your children don't need perfect. They just need connection with you.
Yes, love it. And there's, from what you shared, there's so many important things. One of those that for me is super important, and I tell this all of the time to my clients, especially those that are parents, is putting time for yourself, prioritizing yourself. And that doesn't mean that you're not putting your kids as important. Is both of you are important. You need to be well to meet your kid in that space, and as well being present. There's so many people nowadays that they are just not there. And I always tell to people, even those that don't have kids, is if you believe that you are present, go spend some time with a kid. They will call you out. They will, if you have your phone or you're a little bit distracted and you're not present, they get that. And as you were saying, if their need is that of connection and they need that, then of course they are not going to actually get it, even if you're there, but you're not really there.
That's
so
right.
Making sure that we do have that, as you're saying, we all need continue work on ourselves and continue to get to understand. And that comes where, and I love what you said about curiosity, being curious about ourselves, about our relationship, about everything in life. For me, being curious is such a wonderful state of being, because that means I'm open and I'm not taking everything as face value. It's just oh, this is interesting. How come I did this? How come that happened? And just being able to stay open with that it's so beautiful. And I don't know, do you have something perhaps to share about that being present, and a little bit on what is happening nowadays a lot with screen time? Is there something there, both from the parents' standpoint and from the kids? Is there something in particular to share about that?
So I guess with our brains and the brain development, we develop through relationship. Okay, we develop through relationship. And when you're young, this is relationship with your parents. That's how we develop. That's how we thrive. And like you said, it's not just having somebody next to you, it's actually having that eye contact with another human, with our parents. And that's how our brain knows that we're safe as well, and that everything is okay, is having that eye contact, that touch, that, I hear you, I see you, and I understand you. Okay. They're the three things. If you remember anything, that is what every human requires, desires, and yearns for. And this is usually the reason why our behaviors are extreme, because those needs are not being met usually. So we develop through relationship. Now, the thing is, with what we create in our world at the moment, with the whole social media thing and just keeping busy, actually. So it can be all of it. It's, I'll hear parents say, I'm just too busy to do that. I'm busy. Well, what balls can you afford to drop so that the most important things are being tended to? So we are training our brain and our children's brains to be, what's the word I'm looking for? We're training them to be, it's eluded me right now. I'll explain it in a different way. So we're training our brain to want reactions, responses, and results immediately. Okay. We want it immediately. We want it now. And if we don't get it now, then something is completely wrong, and we don't really want to be able to work for it. We just give up, right? There's no resilience building there. There's no sense of, well, let's try again. Let's go. It's just all based on this technological world, not based on relationship. It's this, there's no 3D-ness to it. It's and the brain, the brain understands this. Okay, the brain knows then that, well, I don't need to form relationships anymore, or I don't need to connect with people, and yet I still need to, but I still can't work out why something's not okay in my body. Or we're finding that a lot of children and adults too, but a lot of children are getting addicted, right? It's completely addictive. And then we get to see that it's a disassociative method. And what I mean by that is that we're disassociating from our emotions, our body. All right. Now, if we are disconnected from our body, which is the central part to where we feel things, where we feel sensations, where our emotions kick off and then tell our brain what to do, we're disconnecting from that, and we are not feeling what we need to feel, all right, and knowing that this is normal, it's normal, then this is where we are terrified of anxiety. We are terrified of sadness. We are terrified of anything other than absolute elation, because we've reached a certain target in our game, or on social media, we've got that new notification, we've got a like button, we've got a comment. And I can feel myself when I get to that point too. I'm not immune to this either. And I'm planning my social media escape, right? I don't want to rely on that for my company. I don't want to do it. I'll hire people to do it. But when your brain is doing it. So really, if we continue to disconnect from our body, we're going to continue seeing emotions skyrocket. And this means anxiety, depression, suicide rates. This is everything that comes with it. We discount the power of our body. And this is a huge, I would say the number one issue with these disassociation methods. And social media is the perfect one. So is TV, Jesus, TV is a big one too.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for saying that, because for me, I know in my own experience, and this is one of the biggest things that I share with all of my clients, is getting back and reconnecting with our body, reconnecting with our feelings, because that enables us to navigate our life and not having to, as you were saying, trying to escape or having all of that fear around all of these different experiences that we're going through. So that's so important. And I would love to continue talking, but I'm aware of our time. So I'm just going to get to a few last questions.
Of course.
The first one is, what's one resource, website, book, podcast, or anything that anyone that's interested in these topics can go and check?
Yeah, so you can go onto my YouTube channel actually and watch some of the videos around epigenetics that I've popped up on there. You can also go to my website, jessicamcilveen.com. And there you'll be able to get curious about epigenetics. You'll be able to take a quiz just to see what your epigenetic health type is, and therefore what your parenting type is and how that could be impacting your children, good or not so good. So I would be going there, and that's probably the best method to start getting curious about it, start doing some reading about it, is those two methods. And I've got, you'll be able to contact me there, and I'll be able to send out some resources to you if you know what the issue is that you want to tackle, but that would be the best step.
Wonderful. And I think that you already mentioned so many, and feel free to repeat one that you already mentioned, but what is one tip that you would share? Like if someone comes to you and it's like, just give me one tip.
One tip. Yeah, this is one tip is, I'm going to do two. One tip is to start getting comfortable with the negative emotions in your body. And you can go onto my YouTube channel, and I've created a meditation around subtle body work, which is a concept to do this. Because when you do that, you are going to be less reactive, and you are going to be a lot calmer in every aspect of your world. With your children, with your partner, with yourself, at work, everywhere. So we need to get comfortable with our sensations, our emotions. Otherwise, we are going to continue going into this dark hole of thinking that something is wrong with us, when in actual fact, it's just us being human. So get comfortable with your feelings in your body, connect with your body. And two, get out there and stop focusing on the guilt around not doing anything, and go do something for yourself. If you don't take time for yourself, you're going to continue suffering in silence. And or maybe you're not suffering, and maybe you just really hit a flat point, or you just really not inspired because you haven't spent time on your own in so long, or you don't even know who you are anymore, or your identity is lost. You know, I run a lot of mothers retreats, and this is a huge one for them when they come. Just want to reconnect to who I am outside of motherhood. So take the motherhood mask off then. Take it off. You're going to feel a bit guilty. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you will. And go do it anyway. Because the guilt of constantly yelling at your children is going to far exceed the guilt that you take to go have a weekend to yourself. Because I tell you what my mother's experience on those retreats is life transforming, and they show up as a different mother every single day. So take time for yourself and reconnect with your body. We're humans. Let's just get comfortable with the uncomfortable, stop expecting perfection, and let's just accept with what goes. And that then means you'll be able to accept with whatever flows for your children too, which they will thank the gods for when they are older.
Yes, amazing. And I am so thankful that my parents actually did so much work on themselves, because as they did that, they allowed me to be me. And they didn't compare me with my siblings. They didn't, they met me where I needed to be met. And I'm so thankful actually that they took the time for themselves to then have that benefit. So that's such an important thing.
Wow. That's really good to hear. That's so nice.
And I hope that, as you're saying, that more people do this, whether they are parents or not. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not taking the time for your own development. And the last question can be actually quite similar, but is, what is the one thing that you wish everyone knew?
Yeah, that this thing they call life is messy. And, you know, in order to get out of the mess for myself, because again, I'm not immune to this, I have a human brain, and the consequence of having a human brain means getting in the mess sometimes. So when you're stuck in the mess, you're stuck in detail, You need to get a bigger picture. Okay. If your child's failing their grades, it's a detail. It's a minute detail. So how can you get to a bigger picture? Well, you start thinking above yourself, outside of yourself. So that my hot tip to do this, and it's so simple, is simply to, if you like journaling, great, or just talk to your 85, 90-year-old self. Okay, just go far beyond you, just go beyond this here and now, because the here and now is not as bad as you think. It may feel like it. I get it, because gosh, my body gets stuck in those states too. And I feel like either this argument with my partner's never going to end, this feeling of failure is never going to end, this feeling of guilt, right? It feels like it's never going to end, but I can assure you it does. So start thinking outside of yourself into a different realm. And that's chat to your 90-year-old self. I do it all the time. Journal to them, see what advice they'd have for you. And it might just be, cool your jets. Like, you got nothing to stress about. Grades don't matter. What really matters is the relationships they get to have when they're older. Are they going to be a happy human, or are they going to be worried about needing to achieve perfection all of the time? What's more important? You chat with millionaires and executives and whatever, this idea of success. And I tell you what, the only ones that are truly successful are the ones that got there based on self-awareness that things are not perfect and it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. And a lot of them fail in school. So what? Great. Who cares? So we really need to get out of our way. There's so much mud and just junk in our way of needing to have this human experience perfect. We're here for 80 to 90 years, right? Stop making it needing to be perfect. Just allow what needs to happen to unfold. Fear gets in the way. So I would want everybody to know that, I don't even know where I started with that, but I think I've made that point very clear. I tend to go on the rants, I get really amped up and pumped. So hopefully I made my point very clear.
Definitely. And I think that it's that allowing and that being able to have that perspective, as you were just saying, getting away from this moment now, especially for those that haven't had the experience of how to work with the energy and the feelings and that negativity. So definitely having a little bit more of that perspective with, as you were saying, whether that's journaling, talking, or whatever it is that works for each person, being able to bring that into their lives. And one more time for the people that want to follow you, where can they find you on social media and on YouTube?
Yeah, so YouTube is Jessica Mcilveen. So is Facebook, and Instagram is the same, jessica.mcilveen. And then, as I said before, our website's Jessica Mcilveen it's just jessicamcilveen.com. So yeah, you've got all those methods. Go on and read my stuff, see what tips are there or what information. And you can join my group too, which is the Parent Support Collective, if you wish. Come on in. We just get to have interesting topics and conversations in there. So yeah, there's plenty of methods.
Beautiful. And we will have all of that in all of those links in the comments of this show. Thank you so much, Jessica, for taking the time and for sharing such an inspiring conversation for me. I love doing this because I get to speak to people like you that are creating amazing stuff in the world and helping so many people. So thank you for being here, and for everyone listening. I would love to know what resonated with you. What are you doing about this? How is your relationship with your kids? How is your relationship with yourself? Let us know in the comments whenever you see this episode. What is this experience for you? What have you learned? So yeah, such an important topic to touch on. So one more time, Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll see everyone on the next one. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using hashtag conscious action and tagging @consciousaction so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.